raise it, because this is not going to go public. This is going to stay in a kind of an unlisted mode in YouTube, and only the people who are in the group will get to listen or get to see this. Safia and Momita, if you have any objections regarding recording this session, you may say it. You may object. If you don't raise an objection, that means it's okay that I record the session. Okay, so yeah, Mumita says no objection. So Sanjukta, you may proceed.
Okay, sir. Mm, I have a question. Actually, I have many questions regarding this topic. The first question is, what is pantheism, and how does the idea of pantheism relates to Wordsworth poetry?
Uh, yes. Uh, so should I start?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes,
yes,
yes.
yes.
Yes. Thank you, Sanjukta, for asking the question. So pantheism, I think this is mm, a concept that you, it's related with the spirituality, and there's some kind of you look that uh, 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 mm, they find some kind of uh, mm, divinity within the within nature. So every natural objects are the part of the great soul. uh, uh, you look at Wordsworth poetry that we often find the pantheism in Wordsworth poetry. So nature, Wordsworth find some kind of divinity, some kind of mysticism, and even with inspirations or the spirituality in pantheism. We can find some kind of pantheism in Rabindranath Tagore's poetry. Uh, okay, so uh, I tell as much as like this. So
It's
even
okay.
you look at even in prelude we can find that uh, he gives the description of nature and how he relate all these things with one kind of spirituality. So I think this is one kind of concept that relate every element of nature with a great soul. So that is the divinity. So in precisely, I can say this one. Okay.
Yeah, fine. It's okay. Sir, if you want to add something more.
So shall I ask later or add after the question I
Yes,
say?
I will be the last person to ask questions. So Sanjukta, you can ask a number of questions to Hassan, and you will provide your answers to Hassan after you have done asking him the questions.
Okay. Name two, three periodicals in Romantic era.
Two, three, period. mm, yes. Edinburgh Review, the Blackwood Magazine, Quarterly Review, uh, all this like this. And
And the publication date.
yes, let me. I know it. I have read it. So first one is Edinburgh Review. The second one, the Quarterly Review, and third one is Blackwood Magazine. No, the I forgot the date. Uh,
Okay.
okay.
No more questions from you, Sanjukta? Sanjukta, do you have any other
I think
questions?
she has more questions.
Okay, sir.
Hmm.
Up to
Hmm.
this. If I find more,
Okay.
then I will ask more.
Okay, all right. So you are supposed to give him your answers as well, like about pantheism and the periodicals and the dates, so that we all know.
Okay. Pantheism, the term signifying all is God. Hasanda is actually find what because that whole thing is there in his answer. It was a term. Actually, the term was coined by John Toland. In 1705, it is a kind of monism that all thing that we find the existence of everything is one in a single substance, that is the divinity or God, whatever you can say. We find the theory of pantheism, most of the poetry of Wordsworth, suppose in an example like Tintin Abbey, the word presence, like, and the active principle, the I cannot remember exactly the lines at the quotation, but here the omnipresence of the active principle is strongly similar to the pantheistic concept. Uh,
Okay. And what was the name of the person who coined this term pantheism?
John Land,
Okay.
June.
So could you tell me the
John,
spelling?
John, 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 Toland,
John.
Toland.
Toland. Okay.
Yeah.
And when was this coined?
1705.
1705. Okay. So this is what you see. This is what they're looking for. Though Hassan's concept was right, but this is the encyclopedic knowledge that they're looking for. Okay, that who coined this term, when, and if, say, if you want to ask questions related to what you answer, then my question would be, what is monism? Okay.
Monism is
Hmm.
all that exists is one single substance, and the substance is obviously God or divinity. This is the idea of monism.
Okay, and who coined this idea, who developed this idea, monism? Whose idea is it?
I don't know, sir. This.
Anybody? Hassan?
No.
Safia, Momita, Devdulal in chat? Anyone? Whose idea is monism? I mean, who developed this idea of monism, and when? Make a guess. Make an educated guess. Just say whatever you have in your mind, like, because in an interview, keep saying, keep talking, like Hassan was doing. Okay, I know the date, and he was thinking that which date it was. I really like that, Hassan. Keep talking. So, yeah, I think it was Spinoza, or it might be Leibniz, or it might be Descartes, but I think it was Spinoza. I think,
Yes.
like, I think, because he said in his what was the name of his book? Um he was talking about substance, right? And he said that everything is actually a unity, and everything emanates from God, and God is one, and so on and so forth. And this also leads us to the idea, if somebody, okay, fine, no, I will not say this right now, but anyway, so it was Spinoza whose idea developed, um, and who was, whose idea was Spinoza opposed to? Sanjukta?
Lockean idea, sir. Idea of
Locke
John.
came much later. Locke came much later. Locke is 16th century. I mean 1700s actually. Descartes. Spinoza actually denounced, or Spinoza challenged Descartes' idea that body and mind are different. Okay, and he said that body and mind are the one and the same. Leibniz also said the same thing. But anyway, let's not go there. But trust me, whenever you talk about this pantheism, people might drag you over there. So thank you, Sanjukta, for this question. Now we know if we are really serious about romanticism, we have to go back to Leibniz and Spinoza, and right back to the Renaissance thing. Okay, so because
Yes,
okay,
sir.
so
Sir,
hmm,
when I
yeah.
was reading it,
Hmm,
I was thinking that how should we study that chapter specifically when we're studying that romantic poets?
hmm.
Should we just read that the name and year and every all these things? I was on confusion that what should I read?
Hmm. Well, you start with the romantic poets, but you don't stop there. You memorize who published which poem at what date, and then you go into these concepts like pantheism and monism and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. Next, Safia, you okay with write it? Can't hear properly. Can you hear me, Momita, or okay? Wait, Devdulal. Momita can't hear. Momita, can you hear me? Can you unmute and say, Momita?
I think Devdulal has posted a
Yeah,
question.
Devdulal has posted a question. Yeah, and Momita says it's now clear. Okay, so yeah, okay. So Devdulal, can you try to answer Devdulal's question, Hassan?
Yes. Question is, what is the difference between romantic literature subjectivism and modern literature subjectivism? So, you look, uh, yes, uh, I can try. I think, yes. You look, subjectivism is one of the major theme in romantic periods. Now, this what type of subjectivism they actually practice? Of course, uh, you look at yes, there's some kind of variety. They they actually practice there's some kind of variety within themselves. So, as Wordsworth, Shelley, and Keats are even you look at first generation, yes, and Coleridge also. So their notion of subjectivism is different, but uh, they all actually nourish and they cherish some kind of common issues. uh, you look at nature. So so they are individuals, but they find some kind of inspirations from nature, and even yes, some kind of inspiration from nature. Mm, and you look uh, and if I say in context of that, the modern literature, the subjectivism is much different. We find that the effect of the world war. So society actually this and people are if we read that T.S. Eliot, the the last song of Jalpo Prufrock. So Prufrock's individualism or subjectivism, that is purely different. So what context different? Some kind of you look lack of confidence. Uh, uh, you look inferior psychologically they are inferior. So in romantic period, they are psychologically not in that in position inferiority on that superiority. So they nourish that they experience the nature with their with their full sense, with their psychologically they experience that things. That's been they found some kind of divinity within them, some kind of spiritual inspiration in romantic in nature. But in romantic in modern period, that is much what I can say that I can't tell the actual the term. So whatever that is much selfish one. The society actually divided in a small section. So it's the so-called what in context of society, in context of politics, I can say. So this individualism is not uh, is 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 some kind of lack, I think. Okay, that we can find uh, in romantic literature. So Devdulal, for my part,
Okay,
I have
so
already tried. So
yeah, that's okay, no problem. So next, Safia. That she wanted to be just an audience.
No, that is fine. I was not
Okay,
ready because it's fine. I'll ask one question.
good, cool.
Just like, can you, Hassan, can you please uh, talk about Coleridge's contribution to lyrical ballads and and his own work, Biography Literaria. Just can you please talk about these two works? In the sense, like how much contribution Coleridge has made to biography, this thing,
oh,
lyrical
so
ballads, and
sorry.
then not in detail about like that,
I
but
am so
just
sorry that
mentions.
actually I was talking without unmuting that uh, audio. So
No,
yes, thank you. So in Biographia Literature that is published in 1798, in that actually total poem, I think 23. So four poems are actually written by Coleridge, and the first poem of uh, mm, lyrical ballad actually uh, it was written by it was written by Coleridge, that is Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and I can say the last poem of the lyrical ballad was the Tintin Abbey. So in short, the four poems are written by Coleridge, and 19 poems are written by Wordsworth. Okay, so this is part of uh, I think lyrical ballad. So in biographical literature, we look at this is a very critical writing. I can say I can find that Coleridge is one of the very the scholastic feature in romantic period. So he has some kind of that scholarship, that's the type of knowledge. I find that his knowledge is much more than even Wordsworth. So so in the Bygone literature, he actually gave some kind of theory of poetry. So you can find in that the theory of fancy, the theory of primary imagination, secondary imagination, and like this. So fancy, I can, if I elaborate it, fancy is some kind of low level faculty of mind that is purely memory, and the primary memory and secondary memory, the primary memory actually that is experience and some kind of your creative power, and the secondary memory actually that depends on this. So from my part I can say to this, uh, thank you, Safia. Yes, if I am not correct, please correct me.
yeah, it is fine, Hassan. Like, do we have to answer now only? Like, yeah, okay. Uh, the thing is that while talking about lyric ballads, maybe because you were kind of worried, I guess, in the sense like no has to answer or something like that. So you might have made a mistake. Perhaps if I have not heard you wrong, you said Tintin
Most
Abbey. Okay.
yes, Tintin Abbey.
So it's by Coleridge, you mean?
No, 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 no. This is I told that this is the last poem of
Okay. Okay. Okay.
of lyrical ballad that is written by uh, uh, Wordsworth.
Okay. 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 Fine. And I also wanted. I was also expecting from you, like, to say a little bit more about what all the things are there in biography literaria, like how the work is divided. Of course, you have said some, but some parts, like I was expecting you to say something like. It also talks about his kind of, its autobiographies. Like it is a kind of combination of biography, aesthetics. Biography, aesthetics, and philosophy. So you have said
Yes.
about that, but yeah. Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Um, Momita, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat as well. So can Devdulal, so can Sonjukta. You can think of more questions, or we can go to Priyanka. If you have questions for Hassan, it could be rapid fire. It could be like one question, and then we can hold on to the tails of that question to enter into the jungle of related questions. So Priyanka, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Instead of asking a different question, okay, is this for Hassan or for Devdulal? I couldn't understand because I thought Hassan was answering.
It's for me. Hmm.
Sir, actually, I was outside, sir. That's why I. Yes, sir. Next time won't be, sir. Okay, but things, Hassan, which came to my mind when you were answering. Uh, First of all, you were giving a brief idea. Obviously, that was a question regarding lyrical ballads.
Yes.
So, if I have to ask you the first question, I'll ask you what are the four poems of Coleridge in lyrical ballads?
Yes. So I know only one question, that is the rhyme of the ancient mariner. I don't know rest of the three poem. I'm so sorry.
No, 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 don't be sorry. There is nothing to be sorry. Please don't say like this that
Actually,
I'm
I
saying
have
this
read it
because
somewhere, but I can't remember.
no, the four poems
At
are
least,
Rhyme of Ancient Mariner, Foster Mother's Child, Nightingale, and Dungeon.
ah,
But the point is that when you say something which is like can give a lot of more questions, you need to be kind of sure that yes, you are not putting your leg in a pothole.
yes, thank you.
Otherwise, this is the first question that comes to my mind. Like, what are the other poems? And like also as Safia was asking, so I'm so sorry, like biography literaria. So if you just have to explain biography literaria, how would you do that? If someone simply asks you to explain biography literaria.
Yes, so I can, yes, I can say that Dr. Safia actually already said it. So if I add more in that context, that biography of literature actually, he has theorized that what is poetry. In that poetry also he has criticized Wordsworth also in terms of poetic technique. I can say. Uh, Actually, I have not read much about
Okay, okay. Hmm.
biography
Can I?
literature. Yes,
Yeah, this is what I was expecting you when I wanted to talk about lyrical ballads and biography literaria, because the question like how it is divided, biography literaria is divided into um, two parts, like first he talks about biography and all about himself, then there is like part one talks about uh, sorry, part one talks about autobiographical elements, like talking about Coleridge and his friendship,
Hmm.
all this. And then in chapter 13 and something, he talks about fancy and imagination, and part 2 is almost entirely crucial and important, because this is where he is attacking on Wordsworth, specifically talking about lyrical ballads. So this is what
Yes.
from my part.
Thank you
And
very much.
yeah, and the question Priyanka has asked was like first question, like the poems contribution of Coleridge to lyrical ballads: the Ancient Mariner, the Foster Mother's Tale, the Nightingale, and the Dungeon. So
Yes, thank
this
you.
was okay.
Okay, Hassan, to add one more thing,
Mhm.
since you were talking about what are the, like, as Dr. Safia also explained, don't you think that biography literary is ultimately about not his own normal autobiography, but about his aesthetical autobiography? Like how he looks at his own development as a poet, and therefore he talks about who is a poet and what is the work for poet.
Yes, uh, it is. I think is one type of development of the poet. But from the poetic perspective, what we can find in Prelude, it is Wordsworth development of poetic career or, as a poet mind. So I think this is in biography literature, Coleridge actually developed the same notion in critically in a different manner. Okay, so like this.
Okay, thank you.
So Devdulal, you have asked that a question. So may I get the answer? That's
Devdulal is
yes.
having a tough time talking,
Okay. Okay.
so he might write you the answer, or he might record the answer in the group. And I would request everyone in the meeting to jot down the questions that have been asked to each candidate, so that we have a whole bank of questions to bank on.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Definitely.
so that's it with Hassan. We cannot give you more time than this. Next is Momita, but Momita is saying that she's coughing. Well, what happens, Momita, if you cough on the day of your interview? Um, you have to appear in the interview anyway. See, anyway, okay, fine. Let's go to Sanjukta. Sanjukta, you okay with
Yes.
questions?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So first, Hassan, ask your questions to Sanjukta.
Okay. So I have actually I have prepared some question. So Sanjukta looked at how can you divide that romantic poets in terms of generation. So and if you uh, get you do some kind of division, so what are the basic distinction of that two groups?
Yeah, actually, I haven't read much. Still, I'm trying to answer. Romantic poets are actually divided into two groups. And the first group, the Wordsworth, Coleridge, and the last group, the belated romantics. The person that are there in the group are Shelley, Keats, Byron. And the second group, they came much later. And Wordsworth and Coleridge, they came at the very beginning of the Romantic era. And the distinction that we actually find in their poetry, I mean the theme that deals with the first comer in the Romantic era, is that they deals with the mm, theme of nature, and here the mind, that is the self, actually they try to make an connection in both the relationship between man and nature. And here mind is actually acts as an receptive system, that means that mind is here takes an important role in building the man and relationship. And second generation romantics, that is here we find a what should I say, the dominant figure, if we can say, like Blake. Blake come much later, but Blake is something, uh, if the precursor, if the first comer of romantic poets deals with the nature, and Blake try to defend the theory by asserting the reason and logic that was prevalent and dominant in the era of long 18th century. Here the first comer always try to assert that the thing are there, reason and prose and logic, all the principles
Okay,
that are
okay,
there,
okay.
but
Thank you. So now I'm asking next questions. Who is given credit for using the term quote unquote romantic to describe the literature in the that type of literature first time?
actually the term romantic has some connotation, and you are saying romantic, the very idea, if the spelling is
Yes, R O M
romantic,
A N T
then
I C. Yes,
yeah,
romantic.
if
The word
it was
romantic.
first used by Samuel Johnson in his dictionary, in the dictionary of English language, which was published in 1755. There the actually the spelling was romantic, what you are saying, romantic, and within bracket it is written as K.
Okay. And you look that we often heard that that type romanticism has 11,000 more than 11,000 definition. Have you heard it?
Yeah, yeah.
Who gave that 11,000 more than 11,000
Yeah, actually Segel has
11,396?
Segel,
Yes,
Frederick Segel.
are you sure?
Yeah, yeah, yes.
So actually, Frederick Segel actually that using that he is given the credit for using the term romantic first time to describe the literature, and F.L. Lucas in his book The Decline and the Fall of Romantic Ideal that is published in 1948, uh, he gave that definition of more than 11,000 definition. So I'm yes. So I'm asking the next question. Could you tell me that what is the influence of French Revolution on Shelley?
Sorry, I haven't answered. I couldn't. Means I cannot answer because I haven't read much.
Do you find any influence of French Revolution on kids?
No, I haven't read on that.
Okay, I'm sorry. So could you tell me that that drama, any drama actually written by Coleridge?
Yeah,
Yes.
Coleridge, I cannot remember, but Wordsworth has written a drama called Border.
Yes, Coleridge is also written. Coleridge has written one drama that we all know that is the Remorse. My question is different. Coleridge has written a drama in collaboration with Southey. So, what was the name of that drama?
I don't know.
Yes,
Sorry.
my yes, no, it's okay. So that is the fall of Robespierre, an historical drama that is written in 1794. So I'm asking another question. So, sir, am I taking much time? Okay. So, who described the Wordsworth, the prelude, as a lyrical building Roman?
I have read this, but I cannot remember in this time.
Yes, Richard Clarke, Clarke. Okay. So, what was the name of the you look that Palace of Kubla Khan?
Xanadu.
Yes, thank you. And you look at mm, one type of a vision of judgment. Have you? Can you tell me that who has written the vision of judgment?
Saude. A Vision of Judgment was written by Saude, and The Vision of Judgment was written by Byron. Actually, it's an attack on the previous one.
No. So my question is that yes, he has Saud has written a vision of judgment uh, uh, on commemorating on death of someone. Whose death?
I don't know.
Yes. So it was the George the third. So again, my very tricky question that in 1822, you look at Byron, Lewis Hunt, and Shelley, they actually traveled in Italy. These three men actually published a political journal in Italy. Could you tell me the name of the journal, that political journal?
No, I am not.
Yes, that is the Liberal. So, sir, from
Liberal is also a contribution of Leigh Hunt.
yes, again, yes, I told you, na, the three men.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So again, the last question: who wrote the preface of the Frankenstein that is written by Mary Shelley?
I don't know.
That is written by P.B. Shelley. The preface of uh, the Frankenstein. Could you tell me what is the first novel of Shelley? I got this just today. I know it. I don't know whether it is correct or not. Just J Z A J Z A S T R O Z double Z I. It is written 18. Actually, I don't know what is it is written or published. That is 1810. So, sir, from this side is all.
Okay, all right. That is very good. Next is Safia and then Priyanka. If you have questions or if other people have any questions, they can like type it in the chat box. Safia, if you have questions. Oh,
So should I go on?
yeah. Priyanka, go ahead.
While Dr. Safia, if she comes, like if she's available, then she can ask afterwards.
Hmm.
Okay, Shangyukta, what I'm asking you is exactly from what you have said. Okay, so I'm not going anywhere outside. When you were giving the definition of explaining the generation of romantics, you said that they came much later. Do you know when did Keats died?
and she said it for about I think if I am not mistaken that she said it about Lamb, Zia or Blake.
No,
I
the
have
Blake one I'm
told.
coming later. Shongjukta, first of all, you said that that the difference between the two generation of poets, that is the younger romantics and the older romantics, they came much later. That's why I'm trying to say you that when did Keats died? Keats died quite young,
It was in the year 1825.
1821.
Okay.
So, in case you were saying that they came much later, that is not true because Coleridge was almost still writing when Keats died. Maybe Lyrical Ballads was published 20 years back, but Coleridge and other people were still writing. So it is not because they came much late, that's why they were called later generation, but it was something in their way of writing, the kind of ideas they were outsourcing through their writing, which termed them as a different group.
Actually, I have told that Blake came much later, not the second generation romantic.
So when did Blake came? Blake belonged to which age, Sanjukta?
Blake belongs to romantic era, but
Blake is before
Blake came.
romantics. He's precursors of romantics.
Okay, sorry, then my idea is wrong.
No, it's not about wrong. You are just getting panicked. That's it. Obviously, you know when did Blake came and when did the earlier generation of romantics and Wordsworth and others came. Just maybe because everyone is asking, you are getting panicked. But Blake did come much earlier. Not much earlier, but he was the precursors of romantics, the link between the Augustans and the romantics. And then came Coleridge and Wordsworth.
Okay.
Okay, so when you were saying that there were two groups of poets, can you tell me, or can you tell me the name by which the first generation of romantics were known? They were known as something poets. Coleridge, Wordsworth, and there was someone else.
Hazlitt.
No, not
William
Hazlitt. You have already mentioned his name in your answer. But then what were they called, that group of poets?
Lake poets. They are called lake poets.
Yes, they were called lake poets. And any idea about why they were called lake poets?
Because they lived at the much near about the lake district, I think.
Yes, and the third person was Southern before they fell out and before, like, while they were friends.
Yeah.
Okay, and another question which I thought, but then I cannot recall now. I thought I wrote it, but I haven't. Anyway, that is two things I just wanted to point out. Thank you.
Okay, so Safia doesn't want to answer. Momita has
Sir,
fever
one
and
thing
cough.
I want to
Yes.
know, actually, when I was I was reading one question that came to my mind, but I don't know the answer. So I was reading about the Paterloo massacre. So is there any influence or of Paterloo massacre in Roman poets? So that was my question. I don't know the answer. So this is called
Pattern massacre.
but the Battle of Paterloo and the Paterloo massacre that actually happened in Manchester, England, when a cavalry charge into a crowd of I think 60,000 to 80,000 gathered at a meeting in demand for reform of parliamentary representation.
Hmm.
So
I don't know about this. And Devdulal says that Shelley's poem "The Mask of Anarchy" is written on the on it, like inspired from that incident.
oh, thank you very much.
Hmm. Okay,
Are
so
you
that's why
asking for the
we
Peterloo massacre?
Yes.
Yes, Peterloo
the
massacre. And it was
Peterloo massacre.
in the year 1819.
Okay.
And Mask of
So
Anarchy was the basis. Yeah.
I couldn't understand the name. So okay, yes. Next, Safia and Momita both do not want to take up questions. Okay, Priyanka, you are up next, and all of you can ask her questions. Since Hassan was asking, Sanjukta, you can take up.
Okay. Yes. I thought MK ma'am will take the interview, but okay.
Discuss the source of romanticism. I mean the idea, where from the idea is taken, and how the romantics are taking the idea in their in literature. What is the source of the idea, so-called idea, and what do you know about by British romanticism?
Okay, so about British Romanticism, the Romanticism in Britain came much after it actually was almost there in the continent. So the idea was spread before in Germany and French, especially, and then it came to England. Some of the factors which have affected the English Romanticism are American War of Independence, French Revolution, politically and socially, and philosophically it were the French poets and the French philosophers and German philosophers who had a huge contribution or huge reference or huge influence on the older romantics, that is Wordsworth and Shelley. To be more precise, if we look at Wordsworth Lucy poems, they are basically a female rendition of Rousseau's Emile, where he also have the same idea of growing up in nature, just like Lucy. And this is the first section of the question answered. Like, what was the second section, Sanjukta?
The second section was the idea is not at all the idea of English romanticism, but the idea where from the idea actually is taken. I mean, I want you to talk about the theories that are there before romanticism, how the idea of romanticism become prevalent. Means the what is the it is actually a reaction or a critique of
Okay,
the
yes.
thing before that. I want to, yeah.
Okay, so in order to understand that how Romanticism came as a reaction, we need to first understand that what was happening in the 18th century, Neoclassic or Augustan age. If we look at Augustan age, we will realize that Augustan age, where the poetry was mainly associated for aristocratic class, there was a sudden rise in middle class who were becoming educated and they were wanting something to read. And that's why we saw the coming of the periodicals and then later the novels. And somehow poetry became very restricted to a certain class of people, certain, like, as it is always often blamed on the Augustan or neoclassical poets, that they did not have the free flowing poetry. They were more interested in the metrical merits, they were more interested in the words. Obviously we know that is the case with heroic couplets, and therefore poetry became much dry. So when this generation of poets, the romantics, came, they had an idea that we need to write something about the people which the people will understand and they are associated with common people. The very idea of Wordsworth, which he later talks about in Prelude, that it is men speaking to men. Poet is a man speaking to men. So they were trying to write something which has very day-to-day life, day-to-day, what should I say, topics, talking about normal people's lifestyle and not about any aristocratic class. So basically what they wanted was that they wanted poetry to be accessible to all, so that everyone, any layman, can read and enjoy poetry. So if you are talking about a reaction, that was one of the reason, the socio-political reason, that the rise of the middle class was an issue, why romantics came in. Yes, that is, if that is the what is you are asking, like want to know.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
next question, who are the editors of Edinburgh Review?
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay, and the editor of Examiner?
No.
How do you define the idea of imagination and fancy?
The idea of imagination and fantasy comes in chapter 13-14 in Biographia Literaria by Coleridge, where he talks about, where he differentiates between what is imagined, where he first he describes what is imagination, and then he goes on to talk about the two types of imagination, or the two kinds of imagination, primary and secondary imagination. In the same process, he also talks about fancy. So while distinguishing between imagination, he talks about primary and secondary. So he says that primary imagination is something which is there, or which is everyone has that. So it is not something which just has as a special thing, but primary imagination is something which everyone has, and the way everyone imagine things. The secondary imagination is something which makes the poet special, because it is only given to the poets, where they can look at things in a from a very different light. And not only they can look at things from a very different light, they can also make it exact, or portray that in a words through which other people, layman who don't have primary imagination, they can also visualize it. For example, Coleridge's Kubla Khan, where we see that a dome of ice, a sunny dome of ice. So basically, for a layman with primary imagination, a sunny dome with caves of ice is not possible for us to imagine, because we know that the snow will melt. But it is a person with secondary imagination can imagine it, and not only can imagine it, when he has written that in verse, even when we, without secondary imagination, we are reading it, we can also visualize it, picturize it. After this, he comes to fancy. He says that fancy is basically a lower version of imagination, which is again present to everyone, but it's not anything which is original. It's like going back to Astrophil and talking about something which is natural and something which is adopted. So basically, fancy is something which is not original in nature, like imagination. So obviously, he keeps imagination at a higher standpoint than fancy.
Okay, both are the faculty of the mind.
Yes, I guess so.
Okay. Who has written the relics of ancient English poetry?
I don't know.
Okay. I have 3 and 4 questions only for you. It's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, relics of ancient English poetry was written by, actually it's a ballad written by Thomas Percy, and it was published in the year 1765.
And the editors of Edinburgh Review and Examiner.
Examiner was by Lehand, and Edinburgh Review uh, Sydney Smith.
It's okay. We
Actually, I
can
need some.
we can try to sorry, find out. Okay, so that's all from you to Priyanka.
Can I ask a question to Priyanka? Though I am
Okay,
not.
Safia
Just
has a question.
yeah, just a short question. Can you talk about Manfred and Cain and tell me this is by whom? Like who wrote Manfred and Cain?
Priyanka actually left.
Left, I think she did not. Or maybe she, yeah,
Error.
yeah, possibly.
So until she returns, I think we have done these rounds of questioning, and Devdulal was saying something that you want my inputs on the distinction between uh, the the subjectivism and modern literature's subjectivism. Um, I think what the one word that distinguishes these two ideas could be about celebration, could be about compulsion and choice, whereas the romantic poets choose solitude as far as subjectivism is concerned. It was enforced, or it was forced upon the the modern poets. That's what I think it happened. I mean, it's a very theoretical question. Moreover, I think that in the romantic poets, in the romantic poems, subjectivism pertained, or subjectivism is associated with the personal life of the poets. For example, Keats says in his Ode to the Nightingale, a burning forehead and a parching tongue. So he was referring to his TB. He was suffering from tuberculosis, and these are the symptoms of TB. So there's a chunk of personal life in the subjectivism of romantic poetry, whereas as far as subjectivism is concerned in the modern poetry, it is more about individualism than subjectivism, where the individual is a fragment of the society, and it's a terrible situation for that particular person, where it is more outside impression that this individual has of the world, rather than talking about the personal self. For example, if we take one of the icons of modern poetry, say uh, Holloman, or if we take up the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Um, Prufrock decides to or tells us how he looks from the external perspective, from the perspective of expressionism and impressionism. Both these terms are, well, taken from art history, but both of these terms are used to define or signify an individual or a subject, as opposed to what the romantic poets were talking about themselves, not from the perspective, not from the point of view of something that is objective, something that is out there, but something that generates from within. But I think uh, this is what the difference was between romantic subjectivity and modern um, subjectivity. But I'm not sure if that is That is how I think it is, but I don't know if that is the right answer. I mean, in this case, it could be many answers, and I think Hassan did well to answer this question as well. Mm, so was I supposed to ask questions or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all right. Let's start with Hassan. Hassan, I think you mentioned that I'm not sure because though I have activated the caption and it must be there in the recording, but I think you mentioned Biographia Literaria to be published in 1798. Be careful about this. I mean, I think you
Okay.
did because
Yes.
you mixed it up with lyrical ballads. So my question is, when was Biographia Literaria published, Hassan?
Mm, 1824, I think.
No, as Momita writes in the chat, and do not write it in the chat, Momita. It's
Yes.
1817.
70.
Okay, and so as I was talking about this particular issue, since we are with Hassan, just write it down, remember it, do anything about it. That yes, Spinoza developed this idea of monism, that is the unity between all things, that there is a singularity, and it was developed in his book called The Ethics, which was published in 1677. Ethics, 1677. Um, to Hassan, that would be my question for this while. Other than this, I would ask you, um, what is the main idea about language, as Wordsworth mentions in Preface to the Lyrical Ballads? Language. What is his opinion about language?
Yes. So the language, poetic language, it must be, the language should be very simple. So simplicity will be there, and it should be in rustic language, so that the common people, the the language of common people can be reflected in poetry. So one thing is very simplicity is there. Another thing that this is a rustic touch of rustic life.
Hmm.
So two things I can say about the poetic language of, and of course, in terms of poetry, that must be according to Wordsworth, that it must be spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings that recollect in tranquility. It's there, it's different, but as far as poetic language is concerned, it is rustic life and simplicity, I can say.
Okay. So can you give an
Sir,
example of
can I give some? Sorry, sir.
yeah,
Can I
let me
give
ask this
something?
question and then you can come back, Sanjukta. So, can you give an example, Hassan, of a poem where Wordsworth actually put this idea into practice?
Uh, Mm, that is very difficult. Actually, he said this to the rustic life and
Hmm.
etc.
Hmm.
But I think he hardly practiced it. But whatever we looked at the solitary prayers, or uh, even the daffodils, such type of simple, or even Lucy poems, we can find the simple simplicity is there,
Hmm.
and I can find a rustic language as
Hmm.
well. I can my experience.
Hmm. Well, it's the Sailor's Mother,
Sailor's mother. Okay.
which was one of the poems in which she was like gone completely rustic. Okay, that's all to Hassan, and Sanjukta had something to say.
So, so far as a language of poetry is concerned, Wordsworth is saying that in a selection of language, not only a rustic language or language used by men, but in a selection, the very word was there. It's
Okay.
not a
Okay.
natural
Thank you.
language. In a selection of language used by men in their day-to-day life. So here, from the birth of argument is actually born between Wordsworth and Coleridge, as the very word regarding the very word of selection. If it is selected, then it is no longer natural; it become artificial and loses its naturalness.
Yes.
I think
Thank
this
you.
is
That's
the
a
idea
good input,
of.
Sanjukta. Thank you. Okay, so next I will ask my questions to Sanjukta. Okay, in which text, in which magazine, where did Lee Hunt call these group of poets who were later known as romantic poets as lake poets? And what was his tone of mentioning? Why did he call them lake poets?
Because the lake poets actually lived in a lake district.
What is the
That
lake
is the thing.
district? What is the name of the lake district?
I don't know, sir.
Okay, and in which place did Lee Hunt call them lake poets? Lee Hunt, sorry, yeah, Lee Hunt, yeah.
Yeah, I cannot remember the name of the magazine, sir, but it is said in 18.
Okay, so more questions for Sanjukta. Exactly how many definitions? Like Hassan said, there were like 11,000, or is it like 11,000 and some more definitions? How many?
Yeah,
How many definitions were there actually? Though this should be actually asked to Hassan, but I'm asking you.
11,000. I think 33, more 33 was there actually.
Okay, I recall 11,396.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm. All right. Drama. You asked about drama. Hmm. I think you were asked enough questions. I don't want to ask you anymore. Okay. Priyanka. So, you mentioned that Wordsworth took the inspiration of the Lucy poems from Emile. Uh, I would like to ask you two things from that. Priyanka, I think you're here. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, sir, I am here, sir. Please repeat because your voice was cracking.
Yeah, okay. Uh, you said that Wordsworth took inspiration of the Lucy poems from Emile.
Hmm.
Okay, when was Emile published and what was its subtitle?
I can't recall.
Okay, so Emile has this subtitle or a treatise on education, and it was published in
Yes,
1762. Yes, treatise
Mhm.
on education, that was the subtitle, and it was published in 1762. Okay, now compare and contrast one poem from Emile and one poem from the Lucy poem bunch, and tell us how or why do you think got inspired from the Emile poems.
Sir, I haven't read anything from it.
Yeah.
I haven't read anything from it.
So why did you
Or the
say
same.
that? Why did you say that Wordsworth took the inspiration of the Lucy poems from Emile?
I think I read about reading something from Amy Chabra. It was written that Lucy as the counterpart of Emil, because Emil was also a small boy who was grown up in nature with natural education and up the society. was Lucy was also kind of having same idea of growing up in the midst of the food.
And who said that?
I read in Abrams' book. I don't.
Priyanka, your voice is cracking. Yes, come
Actually, my
again.
Wi-Fi is on. I'm trying to connect from my mobile network. That's why it is proper. I read in Amy Abrams' book, but I can't recall exactly where.
Hmm. Okay, all right. um, hmm, can you give an example of primary imagination and secondary imagination?
Instead of secondary imagination, the example of Kubla Khan. For primary imagination, I think it will be our normal imagination or the way we look at something and the way we try to join or connect it with something similar.
Like,
Maybe being at a point and thinking of a ice cream cone. That can be primary imagination.
we
That's
can
similar
look
instruction. That is what we can imagine of. But upward will be imagining something very different.
how different.
That,
Hmm?
I don't know. I can think of Kubla Khan. That's what I have experienced.
No, Kubla Khan is primary imagination. That's all fine. But what
It
can
will
you
secondary
give?
imagination.
Hmm?
Kubla Khan is king of secondary imagination, which the poet has.
Okay, yeah, secondary imagination. And so, can you give an example of a primary imagination? Like you said about ice cream. So,
Yes.
what has that got to do with primary imagination? Like,
No, I mean,
explain it.
looking at a pine tree and thinking of ice cream cone, that can be imagination because the structure is similar. So, as a
Mm-hmm.
layman without secondary imagination, that is how far I can think of.
Okay, all right. Okay. Um, mm, uh, okay, what is Iena romanticism?
I don't know.
What is the Sturm and Drang movement? Sturm and Drang movement.
I don't know.
Hmm?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So let me try to give the answers to my questions to Priyanka. So what was the first one regarding the Emil and
Yes.
Lucy?
William.
Yeah, Priyanka, if you are thinking about, yeah, I'll repeat the question, Momita, in a second. Uh, if you are thinking about going into comparison, you better be prepared for the question that how do you compare? What is the point of comparison? Okay, first thing. Secondly, talking about imagination and fancy, which many of you did not do today, is give examples. They won't ask you to say, okay, give an example. They will expect that you give examples. Okay? Uh, if it is a concept, like whether it is pantheism or monism or whatever, then I asked you about this imagination, primary imagination and secondary imagination, and examples. Yeah, I mean the example that you gave of primary imagination is okay. I will accept it. Um, and so the next question that you can expect is what is fancy? Give an example of a fancy. Okay, that's and what was the other question? Jena romanticism. So Jena romanticism is spelled as Jena, and the pronunciation is Jena. And Jena is the name of a small city. Now it is a city. Back then it was a village in Germany, where one of the branches or one of the strands of romantic poetry or romantic art began in 1790s. Okay. And what was the other one? Strum. Yes. So Momita wants to. It is Strum. Strum or RUMM. RWM. I think it's STRUM. Strum and Drang. DRANG. Some say it's drum. DRUM. But drum. Okay. So Anuradha says it's drum. So it actually means storm and dance, which is also a German idea. And okay, question to Srimoy, because Srimoy joined in late and Srimoy left. Okay, so so question to everyone. Um, okay, question to Priyanka. Uh, who was it that visited Germany, stayed over there for a year, and studied German literature among the early Romantic poets?
Coleridge, sir.
Coleridge.
Yes.
Okay, so
He
it
learned
was
German as
yes,
he learned a language as well.
yes, he
got
did
so
learn.
interested in the literature that he learned the language also.
Yes, right. And it was from there that he took up this Sturm and dance, this storm and dance movement that was going on in Germany. So Germany had this influence on romantic poetry, just like French poetry. Okay, so I don't have any more questions today. Um, Priyanka, you asked questions, right? And all of us asked questions to each other. Okay, so if we have to say anything to each other or in general, we can say to each other, or we can end this meeting.
Yes. So, sir, this is not about. So next Sunday, what will we do?
Next Sunday, I think MK ma'am will be able to take our interview, and she will be there to take the interview, I think. If not, we can give it a rest, or I can try to contact some other professor to take an interview, because some people have already agreed to um, take the interview.
Okay. Okay.
And next assignment, I don't think we are done with romanticism, but if you think we are done with romanticism, we can go to or because we did just romantic poets, and though Examiner and Edinburgh Review and so on and so forth came in, we haven't even touched the Gothic literature and romantic prose, Hazlitt, Charles Lamb, and so on and so forth. So the next
Jane
assignment should
Austen.
be, yes,
So Jane Austen.
Jane Austen, yes. So next assignment could be prose, novel, essays, non-fiction, whatever,
Or
romantic
sir,
prose,
we can do it romantic periods in general.
romantic.
That's romantic age overall.
Yeah, we can further divide it like romantic
Okay.
prose,
Okay. Okay.
which will
So
include
romantic.
Gothic literature, which will include essays, which will include non-fiction, Carlyle and so on and so forth. Not Carlyle, actually. Carlyle was Victorian. So that's it for today. Let us meet next week, and I think next week MKMM will be ready um, to take your interviews, though there will only be 5 people who would be making it, and by the looks of it, you're only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 anyway. So I think my job will be easier and not to, make a lottery or something. Anyway, so but what pisses me off is, a, you can't be late. Two, you can't say that you are unprepared. You can't say that you, Devdulal or Momita, you are, unless and until you are like seriously ill from COVID, only then you will get a second chance with the CSC. If you have a fever without a positive report, you are going to lose your chance to appear before the CSC. These interviews, this time is created so that you think that this is a kind of a rehearsal. Anyway, I hope you take things more seriously, be on time, be prepared, and okay, that's all. Alright, if anyone has to say anything else, or we can discuss further in the group, or I will
Thank you.
end the meeting. Okay, bye bye everyone. No one else's interviews coming up next week, is it?
Sir, in
No,
this round it is only up to AN.
Okay, okay. Make sure that you, if you have friends who are giving interviews, make sure you ask them, make sure you get their questions and post them in the group. Not to me individually, not in the Facebook, but in the WhatsApp group, so that we can learn. Okay. As Momita had some input from someone, and she put it in the group. So if you have friends who are appearing for the interview and they are facing new questions, if they are facing whatever questions they are, and collect them and post them in the group so that everybody can see. Okay, all right. Let us meet next week.
thank you.
Okay, bye bye.